Oh, we got an active audience today. I love it. So there's still just a few more people joining. So everyone was on time. I swear, from like 6:55, the room was filling up. So very excited to deliver this today. And I actually delivered this to my sort of one-to-one clients yesterday, and it went down very well. So I'm very much looking forward to taking you through it. And the reason why I wanted to pull this together is I know Ramadan can be like a very stressful time of sorts for many, many different reasons. I think fitness is one of the things that we always struggle maybe to fit in during the month. And, maybe we're in a place now where we're sort of smashing it. We're loving our structure. We're loving our schedule. We're seeing really good progress. And then Ramadan comes along and sort of disrupts that potentially. Equally, you may be in a position where you find Ramadan as a really good time to basically start, right? To start your fitness because the schedule changes and you see it as a really nice golden opportunity to do so. So wherever you are in your journey, I want you to be clear that this is going to be relevant to you. Obviously, you can take bits that you like, you can sort of disregard bits that maybe don't necessarily work for you. But I want you to leave this sort of the next hour with a good plan of action. So, damn, okay, good. We're up to 35. So this is the Ramadan protocol, and I'm very excited to take you through it. So today I will be taking you through like the key problems, right? The big problems that no doubt you are aware of, but it's really important to identify these things. I'll be giving you these guiding principles to sort of approach both in the run up to Ramadan, but also during Ramadan. And most importantly, I think it's always good to give really like directional and tactical and sort of tips and tricks that you can use to implement within your day, right? Both now in the run up to Ramadan, but then also during. So we can optimize your schedule, we can look at your training, we can look at how you approach your meals. So really, like you may be coming to this with these problems, right? I see these in my clients all the time, and there generally is a feeling of frustration in that you may feel like you're doing everything, you may feel like you're doing everything really well, and you're not seeing the changes that you necessarily want. There may be some confusion that you don't actually know what you should be focusing on, right? You want to go and like put in all your effort, but you don't know where you should be putting in your effort. Maybe you have also experienced this cycle of like failed attempts, right? You've tried so many different things and none of them have necessarily worked long term. And I think really with Ramadan, this is important because, the first week can be like novel, right? It can be exciting, change of times, change of structure. But then, as the sleep hits or the lack of sleep hits, as things progress through the month, that novelty and that intensity can kind of die off. And then you kind of get to this point where you can't sustain what was working and it doesn't work long term. So I want to really delve into what is a sensible, sustainable approach that will see you succeeding, right? And whatever that might be. Equally, generally, when it may come to fitness, you may be having a lack of structure. You may know what to do, but you can't stay consistent. And there may be many, many different reasons for that. And lastly, the decision fatigue. This is one that really can hit me a lot personally, where there's like a million and one things going on in your day, like maybe work, family, other responsibilities, obligations, and you've got to make all of these decisions during the day. And when it comes to your fitness, particularly in Ramadan, when things are just that much more intense, it can feel very overwhelming. Lots of information. I should be doing this, I should be doing that, and you just end up doing nothing. So I really want to delve into these. And from this session, I want you to leave with, a perspective shift on how you approach your fitness in Ramadan. I want you to think about like what action can you take from today to prepare yourself. So when, it starts sort of next week, there's a sort of a structure in place and a plan of action, right? I want you to have less stress around food, training, routine changes, and also, most importantly, if you are someone who hasn't necessarily been able to like crack Ramadan when it comes to your fitness, I want you to be able to build this framework that you can use for the future, right? Because every year you're going to be coming to this same position again, right? And I really want for you to be in a position where you feel empowered. You are stepping into the month knowing what is you want to work on, and you ultimately succeed. Now, a little bit about me, if you don't know too much about me. I have been here in Saudi, in Jeddah, for 7 years, coaching 100 clients in person, online, in KSA, and 17 years total in the fitness industry. And to be honest, when I first moved to Saudi, there was such a change in my approach. As you no doubt are aware, life here is different, and it's got its own challenges, both in terms of maybe facilities, infrastructure, but also just the way of life in terms of tradition and society, family, and sort of these things. And so, really, there is very much a sort of lifestyle centric approach that is required to kind of balance everything and obviously still continue moving forward. This actually is the fourth annual Ramadan protocol session that I am running. I usually do it with clients every year in person, and this year I really wanted to bring it online and share with you. And then also last year, in sort of in Ramadan, the whole month, I fasted for the whole month, and I will share some of my experiences within there. Fine. So, on to the next. Just a little bit about sort of, again, me and sort of my approach. And I think this will thread its way through. I really coach transformation the way it happens in real life, right? Through structured, sustainable systems that really fit demanding schedules, right? Because all of you, I'm sure, are working. You've got family obligations, kids, maybe newborns. Maybe you travel a lot for work or for leisure. Ramadan obviously comes a lot and sort of disrupts the schedule. So you really need an approach that allows you to manage the stress and manage the imperfect conditions, not through extremes or short-term intensity, right? So I really want to deliver to you today the understanding that, behavior and mindset work is most important when it comes to thinking about how you're going to tackle Ramadan. And also looking at, how you can adapt, evolve, reflect, and move on and ultimately succeed. Okay, we've still got a few more people joining. Busy is great. One second. You put the AC on. Okay, so you are going to know this more than me, right? But Ramadan, from what I understand from my clients, having lived here, having experienced it for myself, is a real good time for reflection and growth, right? And so, what comes in this period? Obviously, you've got the fasting, you've got the prayer, you've got health aspects, you've got introspection, and also community. So, I've really found nothing, sort of no other time in the year does community come to life like it does now. And that can be obviously at home, family, maybe in the workplace, maybe in your gym. And it is a really beautiful, amazing time to be here. And that, to be honest, is one of the biggest things that I learned from my time fasting. And within this, I want to share with you a sort of set of questions, right? So we're going to together work through a set of questions, and I'm going to get Alistair to put them in the chat box now so you have them all to hand. But we will kind of stop periodically through this. But I want you to know, like, there is not a sort of a one size fits all approach, right? Everyone here, I'm sure, has different goals in some kind of way. Even if maybe your goal is fat loss, you have different circumstances, different contexts, different situations to navigate. And so every one of you here is different. And so as we go through these questions, it's going to be really important for you to sort of think about your own unique experiences and also the obstacles that you faced before, the schedules that you may have in relation to Ramadan, how that changes, if it changes, and how you then have best adapted to the chaos previously. Maybe you haven't, maybe you have. And this is something that we can get into. Planning, preparation is key, and most important, implementation. So I asked over the years a lot of people around what it is that they struggle with during Ramadan. When to schedule workouts, mama's food, people having their first Ramadan and their concern about routine change. Protein goal is another big one. The food coma at iftar is real if you eat to it. The lack of sleep, the upside down schedule. So all of these are probably things that you are aware of and have experienced over the years yourself. And when it comes to this, I want to share with you a story actually from last year with one of our clients called Firas. And he came to me, it was actually week one in Ramadan. And he was sharing that he was literally in the worst position he had ever been in before starting. For 28 years, he was feeling tired, heavy, unmotivated. And he was considering pushing off until everything was settled post Ramadan, right? And after a bit of conversation, got to the point where he agreed that actually, it was going to be tough because the time is crazy, the schedule is crazy. But he also realized that there wasn't a perfect time. So you may now be in a position where you're like, I previously tried during Ramadan, it's tough. I'm going to wait until afterwards to start working towards my goals, right? However, as I said, Ramadan can be the perfect time for you really to adjust your schedule, deconstruct, get rid of bad habits and build some good ones. And so with Ferris, he started with us. He was down sort of body fat, 7% body fat in 4 months. Body fat kilos was down 6.2, muscle mass up 2.4. And the reason I'm sharing this is because I know it can be overwhelming. I've worked with clients over the years, crazy schedules, crazy intense obligations, this, that, everything else. But it is one of those things that if you prioritize yourself in some kind of way, then you are going to really see the benefit of it. So I'm going to pause here for a moment. And this is now for you to get your pens and paper out and have a think around what is it that you want to achieve this Ramadan. And that can be, yes, Hala, mashallah, good job, Faris. So, what I wanted to deliver by that is it's possible. And as I mentioned a moment ago, it really varies by individual. And that is exactly what we're going to get into here. So answer this now. What do you want to achieve this Ramadan? That can be spiritually, personally, professionally, socially. So while you have a think about that, I'm going to share with you a little bit of a sort of a structure that will help you navigate this. And so when it comes to your fitness, right, it's super important to set the expectations, right? Because I think there's a popular saying, something like, misery happens when reality doesn't meet your expectations, right? And so if you are in a position where you are thinking, okay, I want to focus on progress this month in my fitness. I want to lose 5 kilos. Fine, great. However, there is going to be a set of targets that you're going to need to hit, right? And so for each of you here, I don't know what plan you're following. If you're following a plan, I don't know what program you're following, your nutrition, all of this kind of stuff. But there is going to be a set of targets that you will need to hit in order to see progress, right? Maybe that is if you have 4 sessions a week, over the course of the month, you need to hit 80% of those. Maybe you need to hit 80% of your protein targets, your step target. Maybe you want to focus on building your strength. And maybe, well, definitely, if you want to focus on progress, you're going to have to be intentional in your recovery. Sleep is going to have to be a non-negotiable. And so progress during Ramadan, it can still happen. It can still be fantastic. However, it needs you to set yourself up for success and make sure that you are hitting these targets that you set yourself or your coach sets you or whatever it might be. Now, if you're in a position where you know in previous Ramadans things have been a little crazy, and actually this month you want to maintain where you're at, maybe you've made incredible progress over the last 6 months, then okay, how can you maintain that progress? So this is about potentially reducing the expectations to what you've been doing over the last few weeks or the last couple months. Maybe you reduce the sessions a week. Maybe you shift to home training or body weight training at home if you can't get to the gym. Maybe you prioritize your steps if training drops and keep the movement going. Maybe you focus on just protecting the key habits rather than taking Ramadan as a time where you don't do anything in relation to your fitness. And sometimes, as in life, just maintaining or holding the progress that you've made to date is a win. And then also, we have an identity focus. So this is sort of something really big that we work on in the program, right? Because in order to be the person who maybe is 5, 10, 15 kilos lighter, the person who goes to the gym 5 times a week without fail, this is about stepping into a new identity, right? Because your old identity isn't that person. And so similar to me, just to give you an example with, I'm sure maybe you've seen, I, for some reason, signed up to a half marathon, never being a runner. But for me, in order to do that, I needed to adopt the identity of a runner. And so what does that mean? It means doing the things that runners do, and without boring you too much, getting into that. So it's a case of like, when motivation is low, willpower is low, maybe you're tired, showing up is still a win, despite low motivation or tiredness. Making choices through your day which align with your values is going to be super important. So focusing on recovery, focusing on fuel and nourishment when it comes to your food, rather than maybe the impulsive, instantly sort of gratifying desserts maybe that are on offer. Following through on the things that you say you're going to do, and breaking this all or nothing pattern, which really sort of comes to life, I think, in Ramadan, right? We go all sort of 100% intensity or nothing. So there's a spectrum, right? And, Ramadan is 1 month of the year, and, fitness is for life kind of thing. So the identity here can really translate into, I am the person who values fitness through Ramadan. And then there's damage limitation. If you are someone who is like, absolutely like, maybe I just want to just enjoy, go to all of the occasions, let loose a little bit, and just really enjoy those occasions, that's absolutely fine, right? But if you go in knowing that, then you can at least protect some of the habits that you've been building. So, focus on moving a little bit more. Try and prevent the binge restrict cycles, eating till you're food coma every time you eat, prioritizing hydration and protein still. And what this allows you to do is then post Ramadan and post Eid, you're in more of a stable place because you've actually maintained some of these habits and you're not starting from square one. So sometimes staying in the game is a success in itself. And so again, I'll go back to this question. What is it that you want to achieve this Ramadan? And again, this is something for you to think about in your own time, spiritually, personally, professionally, socially, and obviously in relation to fitness with these things we covered. So for me, last Ramadan, to give you an idea, as I mentioned, it was the first time I was fasting. I fasted for the whole month. So the purpose of that is like, I knew the theory, right? I knew the theory about what you should eat, hydration, this kind of stuff. But I really wanted to understand from like a physical or a physiological perspective what effect that has on the body. So, for me, it was understanding more about what my clients go through. It was about taking on like a new personal challenge, much like with the half marathon, right? Doing something that I always thought was an impossibility, and why would I ever do it? I like my muscle mass too much, so on. And confronting these limiting beliefs of, for example, oh my God, like I can actually train before iftar without water, without food, without energy. I can train and I can have a good session. Never in 18 years had I ever trained without water or food. And so there's something quite empowering when you do confront these limiting beliefs and really tackle those things you may have in your mind. Also, embracing new experiences. So for me, again, like obviously Ramadan is an incredible time when it comes to community, things going on, events, etc. So I wanted to prioritize that over, necessarily getting 4, 5, 6 training sessions in a week. So my goal when it came to fitness was maintaining muscle mass, maintaining strength, and my fitness. I wasn't looking to progress. I was looking to just maintain and enjoy the whole other sort of aspect of life that happens in that time. Now, for you, just to sort of recap on the problems we face, right? Schedules flip. You have this all or nothing mentality, dehydration. And just as I speak about dehydration, I'm getting thirsty. Protein is a struggle, which we're going to get into. Social occasions, maybe you see them more as obligations. You're running on empty, running on fumes, and there isn't necessarily a plan in place. So I really want to sort of tackle each one of those things. And the next question I want you to think about is personally, for you, what have been your biggest struggles? Where have you found success as well? There's things maybe that you've done in the past which were amazing for you, and there were things maybe that you really struggled with. So consider things like your schedule, training, nutrition, gathering, sleep, hydration, etc. And so while you think about that, I'll share some of the things that I learned and also what I will change. And for me, like no family is here for me. I don't have those obligations. Sort of praying and all that kind of stuff isn't sort of for me. So that kind of eases up on the schedule. But timing, damn, is tight, is really, really tight. So, for you who are, doing these things, families, in-laws, cousins, uncles, aunts, all that kind of stuff, like I can understand that. And um, it really was then around just knowing my non-negotiables and setting kind of targets and expectations. So as you can see, this picture, I would be in the gym maybe at 3, 4 p.m. in the afternoon before iftar. I would also try training or squeezing it in over iftar, so breaking my fast when I was in the gym, or maybe sort of up until the gym closed at 2, 3 a.m. in the morning. So it was interesting training at these different times to see how the body reacts. But for me, those 4 sessions a week were my non-negotiable. They were going to happen regardless of when they were going to happen. They were just going to happen. And it was about knowing your schedule and being able to fit those in. Next up, I'm actually stronger than I think. And what I mean by that is, if you're going in for a sort of strength session at maybe 5:30, 6 in the afternoon, you are starting, you're warming up, you're working up to the weights maybe you were using previously. Then, sort of call to prayer happens and you can smash your electrolytes, your water, your dates, etc. And then bam, like you can actually deliver, you can push. And this was one of the big things for me. Now, you may not be in a position to take that time during iftar, but it is there as a possibility. One of the biggest things, the saving graces for me, I'm not sure if you saw it at the time, but my high protein, high impact protein shake. And, with this, you pack in all sorts, right? You pack in protein, Greek yogurt, maybe peanut butter, maybe oats, maybe blueberries, maybe anything and everything, right? And this is something that you can take with you. You can have it as like iftar. You can sip on it through the afternoon, keep it in or the evening, and keep it in the fridge. The sort of possibilities are endless here. And the important thing is you have stacked the cards in your favor here by preparing something that is going to deliver on some of the needs that you have. So for anyone looking really, I mean, this is for anyone, but if you are someone who really struggles to get calories in and get protein in during the window that you have, something like this can be super, super powerful. And there's obviously lots of flexibility in terms of recipes and ingredients. And for me, I'm going to explore more of those this month. And meal subscriptions, these were a saving grace for me as well. They reduced friction and decision making. And so, if you are someone who's needing three, four, five servings of protein a day, if you can maybe, I don't know, go with Calo or whatever your meal subscription is, then you've at least got something there available. And it's just a tick in the box. And it just reduces that stress from you, right? When there's so much other stuff going on. And lastly, you don't always have to say yes. However, there's sometimes you do. So, for example, I went over to someone's and his wife had been, I think, slaving away over Arika for me to try. So it's not as if I was in a position to say no, the honey, the this, the that. So I enjoyed it, right? And as with everything, it's kind of like about how you balance things out, right? So if you are potentially having a higher calorie meal in one portion of the day, then how can you adjust things later on to offset that? So it's not about looking at, this is good, this is bad. It's how everything fits together. And then obviously, of course, in what we do and work with clients, we instill these principles into them so they can really understand how to balance things for themselves, right? Because yeah, it's very hard to say no, especially sort of family members or whatever it is, because they don't necessarily understand what your goals are, and it's just one bite or it's just one piece. But those kind of can break the flow and break the cycle. So again, I want you to think around, where your struggles have been before and also where you have found success. So again, you don't need to answer all these questions now, but you can start having a think about them because, success leaves clues. Things that worked before can work again. And also, just because something didn't work before, it doesn't mean it's not for you. You may just need a different approach. And so, other notable mentions from my time, the body is far more capable than we think. Who you hang around with matters. I realized that if I was anywhere near people who were moaning about being hungry or thirsty or tired or this, I swear that would make everything a million times harder. If I hung around with other friends who were cool, accepting it, were great and positive, then that makes everything that much easier. So who you hang around with matters. And I'm not sure if Alistair's mentioned that in the chat, because Alistair was one of those friends. I'm not going to tell you which side he was on, whether he was the joy to hang around with or he was the issue. Now, awareness around eating, sort of habit eating and hunger signals. So, because you are that much more sort of mindful of these things, you can also start to reflect on your own eating habits and your own hunger signals. Because a lot of the time, right, we eat from boredom, emotion, or even just habit because it's in front of us. For me, I really enjoyed the iftar training. I want to bring that back this year. The late night training, damn, I got some insane pumps and strength increases in that. Having structure and preparation eases stress, right? And so there were times where I was going to iftars, and a lot of the time they can be very, what should we say, carby, right? Lots of carbohydrates, sort of that kind of stuff. And so having something on hand can at least help you get that protein serving in, because one of the issues here is protein goal, hitting that across the course of the night is tough. And so you have to start early. If you miss that 6, 7, 8 o'clock window, then that's potentially like 30% less protein you're going to be having in the day or the night. And also, managing expectations is incredibly freeing. And so, much like I was talking about earlier, knowing the expectation or what you want from the month is really important. So, progress, damage limitation, maintenance, or kind of just maintaining your identity. Now, 4 principles I'll rattle through very quickly. Fail to prepare, prepare to fail. You know, if you go in with at least some semblance of a plan, it's much more likely you're going to be able to stick to it. Easing yourself into it. So day one, day two can be quite a shock, right? So when it comes to your training, for example, you don't necessarily need to think about training on those days if you have trained well the week up to, fasting, right? So you get in your 3, 4, 5 sessions before you start fasting, and then at least you can have a little bit of an adaptation period, a day, 2, 3 days without training, maybe just focusing on steps, etc. And then you can pick up into your training when your body is a little bit more adapted to that. It's also a marathon, not a sprint. And this is goes to the point around, my approach being so much more about sustainability, right? It's not about extremes. Because if you push, and there's been many people who do this, where they're like, okay, Ramadan, I am going to work out every day. I'm going to get 10,000 steps every day without fail. By day 7, 8, 9, they're gone. Like they're finished. Because going from nothing to extreme is somewhat insanity. And very few people can keep it up. So it's really about knowing what is achievable for you and looking at the big picture, right? Because what? We're only in February now. You have after Eid, you've got March, you've got May, you've got June, etc., all the way through the year. And fitness isn't just a thing you take care of at a particular point. Expectations, as I've mentioned, super, super important. So, what can we do from today? I want to get more into some of the practicalities now that I think will sort of shine a light. And so, 1 week out, basically from now, what you can do is sort of you can start to adapt the body to a different routine. And again, this changes for everyone depending on what their setup is. So training, you can experiment with workouts aligning with the Ramadan timings. So maybe if you're working out at like 8 in the morning now, right? That is going to be impossible when Ramadan comes around. And so it's how can you then start pushing your training back to later, maybe to 4, 5, 6 o'clock to align with a different timed session. Also, reducing water consumption during sessions is a biggie. That was, I think, one of the things that got me most when I was training. So now, over this next week, when it comes to training, I'm going to be probably just limiting myself to like one bottle for the first couple sessions and then nothing, just have before and after. And then that starts to get your body adjusted to that. And also, in this next week, you can give 100% intensity to your training whilst you can. Nutrition. Think about what are the expected meal plans you can go for, right? Account for the occasions outside of your home or your control. So what are the things, what are the go-tos that you can get in? Is it a meal subscription? Is it, like the sort of high protein blended shake that I showed you? You could maybe start delaying your first meal to later in the day. So if you're again someone who eats at 6, 7, 8 in the morning, maybe start pushing it back so you can sort of start sort of getting out of that habit at a more comfortable time. Caffeine consumption, obviously smoking you can reduce, sugar intake. And on the lifestyle side of things, I always find it best if we plan for the worst and hope for the best, right? So if we've got plans in place for if things are just impossible, then it's going to make it that much easier to when things go well to sort of enjoy. Setting the intention, pre-committing, scheduling. So knowing when you're going to train if you can. And then bringing friends into this or family or partners, accountability buddies, having people in to build you up and lift you up. Managing expectations with family members. So if you are going to be someone who wants to opt out of obligations or things, maybe it's worth start putting in that now. And then also you can start delaying your sleep a little bit as well if you are someone who totally flips, right? Because you've got to start changing your body clock gradually. Now, the nutrition prep, these are things that you can literally get in place now. So you could subscribe to a meal plan. So as I mentioned before, what I would do is I would have iftar, which would be like the sort of the usual, but also have a sort of high impact shake. I would have 2 calo meals and I would prepare a dinner for myself. And so just having those sort of food subscriptions was super beneficial in terms of reducing friction. You can stock up on supplements. So for example, things like protein shake, your electrolytes to help with hydration. You can stock the cupboards and fridge with all these sorts of snacks, right? Things that you can graze on. And I'll tell you what, I don't know if you've seen this before, the Arla protein flavor pudding. Ooh, 20 grams of protein, and it is literally like dessert. I love it. So these sorts of things you can have on standby just to give yourself another tick in terms of boosting that protein intake. And so, looking at your day, again, this may be different to everyone, but I want to give you some principles. So, during the day, it's important to sort of maintain your body clock in some kind of way. We're not talking about waking up at 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I've been with clients who do that, and it's sort of like literally a total flip. Most people here, I'm sure, are working and they don't have that luxury. Keep the mind busy, focus on light steps and movement. So if you're someone who's looking to lose fat, it's important to keep moving because when you are not eating, your body is going to subconsciously start decreasing how much you move. And so maybe there's sort of less movement, maybe you're walking up and down stairs less, you're taking a shorter route, these sorts of things. And I mean, minimize sun exposure. It's not too crazy at the moment. It's not exactly summer, so this shouldn't be too difficult. And so when it comes to pre-iftar, low intensity strength training is probably going to be the best form of training that you can do. So, stick to your key lifts, your squats, your deadlifts, your upper body work. Be intentional with light movement. So I know a lot of people love, for example, if you're in Jeddah, going to the Corniche and having a walk up and down, amazing, such a vibe, such fun. Or maybe looking at mobility, doing something light, but starts getting the body moving. If you're going to nap, nap with intention. So think about power naps rather than like an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours. And this is an important one. Limit high intensity cardio because you're going to be dehydrated. Anything that causes you to sort of increase your heart rate significantly and break a sweat is going to potentially risk dehydration, being lightheaded, injury as well. And then also iftar, obviously after prayer, you may have social obligations, hydration, obviously number one important. It's really important to have light and easy to digest food. So think about getting that first protein serving in. And then also avoiding the food coma. So when you eat, do some kind of movement. If that's just walking around the block, if that is, going for a walk with your family member, whatever. Just get moving because that's then gonna sort of keep you going into the evening rather than just slumping on the sofa and getting stuck there. Training entirely up to you as to when you can. Maybe before iftar, during iftar, post, or late night. This is going to be something that fits with your schedule. Now, the main meal. Really, I know there's a urge, and to be honest, I had this last year because I had lots of people sending me amazing food, and it was just me, and I was the only person who could eat it. So I probably ate a little bit more than I should. But think about fuel and nourishment here, protein focused, and then we're going to go on to what this looks like in a moment. And then really 10 p.m. onwards, right? You've got obviously prayer, gatherings, relaxing and unwinding, steps, snack with intention, as we mentioned, protein based. And this again is a time to reflect, plan, and share in terms of what's going well, what didn't work, what you need to change. And then when it comes to suhoor, right? Hydrate, but don't overdo it. We don't want you sort of waking up every 2 hours at night, sort of going to the toilet because sleep and recovery is really important. And more nutrient dense food, right? And this is where you get your final portion of protein in. So getting practical, you know, principles here. I want you to really align your tracking with your personal Ramadan expectations, right? We spoke about this: progress, maintenance, identity, damage limitation. When it comes to fitness related sort of principles or tracking, weigh-ins can be quite a bum steer here because if you're going to be weighing yourself at a different time, then there's going to be a whole sort of consideration of hydration and food inside of you. And so what we usually find is if you've been weighing yourself before Ramadan and then you weigh yourself after or during Ramadan, sorry, then the change is huge. And you may think, oh my God, I put on loads of weight, or oh my God, I'm losing loads of weight. And this can just be in relation to fluctuations in hydration. The in body is something that I want you to consider. If this is something that you sort of take on a weekly, fortnightly, monthly basis, try not to compare the in body during Ramadan with the in body you take outside of Ramadan because the conditions are going to be totally different. And then there's obviously other things for you in terms of personal stuff, lifestyle, spiritual, social, professional, etc. Now, what I want you to think about, here's another question for you. Will your training schedule be impacted? And if so, what may need to be adjusted? So consider the time you have available, the sessions you want per week. Are you doing strength sessions or classes, the volume per session, exercises per session, workout length? So what needs to be adjusted? And here are some principles that I think will really help you manage that. So, first of all, knowing what has worked for you in the past and what hasn't. Really important through the month to prioritize strength training over cardio. So, strength training is going to be the thing that retains muscle mass. Okay. If you do endless cardio during Ramadan and not much strength training, you will lose weight. Yes, you will lose muscle mass, which we don't want, right? Acknowledge that there will be an adaptation period. So 2 to 4 sessions usually is the time where your body adapts, right? I want you to start conservative with the weight. So feel your body, right? Don't try kind of first session trying to hit exactly what you were doing previously. Feel your body, go through the motions, warm up, make sure you warm up, and start building the weight. Because probably in the first week, you're going to be lifting less than you were previously. And then you can ramp up. And having trained people in person for many years here during Ramadan, you can really still make good progress when it comes to your strength and your performance. Obviously, if you're looking after recovery and nutrition. Moderate intensity. So if you're training before iftar and you're fasted, we don't want you pushing up to failure. We want you pushing up and working hard for sure, but we don't want you necessarily heavy weights all the way till failure. That is where things like injuries come in. Post iftar, this is where you can go wild, you can enjoy, you can push up to failure because you're hydrated, you're fueled. And extend the rest periods. Don't worry if usually your rest periods are 90 seconds and now you need to maybe go to 2 minutes or 3 minutes. Like take your time, especially during if you're training before iftar. And reduce the volume. Just because you have a plan and it is 6 exercises, right, doesn't mean you necessarily need to do them all initially. You can lower the volume, you can lower the number of exercises, you can do the biggest bang for your buck exercises, and then, build as you go through the month. And so now let's look at the meals. What will your approximate meal timings be? And how will you approach these meals? Hopefully, you've got a good idea of that already. So consider the number of meals, snacks, occasions, locations, guiding principles. What are the things that you are insanely tempted by? For example, I think everyone has that with Ramadan, right? There's one dish, one dessert that only comes out at that time. Maybe it's how your mum cooks it, and that is your Achilles heel. That is what you have to have. So before we go into some of the specifics, it's important to cover off some of the principles here. So plan, prepare, execute, right? Know what you can as best as you can, your meals ahead of time. Like where are you going? What is going to be on offer? What do you need to take? Meal subscription. Do you do this for the month? Maybe for the first week. We'll see. A combination of both. Plan for the social obligations. You probably know where you're going to, what their food is like. So plan accordingly for that. And keep protein at the heart of every meal. It's always good to also reframe occasions as well, because this is about celebration. It's about sort of appreciation of the month and everything that it has in terms of sort of meaning. And so think about that side rather than the excess, right? And this is something that, to be honest, has stuck with me for many years. And it was a client who called Fawzi, actually. And he was telling me how in Ramadan, like because he wants to get closer to his faith, and he wants to kind of spend time and sort of appreciate doing that and what that brings him. He feels at his best when he is sort of eating well, nothing sort of overly processed, fried, sugar, eating in moderation as well, and focusing on his sleep and his recovery. That is where he was feeling his best in order to get closer to his faith. Now, on the flip side to that, what he was saying is, he's had previous years where it would be excess, eat everything, go to bed late, wake up late. And the difference he found in both approaches was sort of massive, was significant. And from there on, he was of the opinion of, I'm going to take care of my body this month because of what it allows me to do. It's important to make smart swaps, which I'll get onto in a moment. And obviously, there's always buffets, right? So if you are trying to lose weight, the one plate rule, no seconds, no going back for more. Excessively salty or spicy food can be a bit of a killer when it comes to dehydration and also the late night caffeine. I know coffee, tea culture is definitely present, but it's worth noting that even just one cup late night can really wreak havoc on your sleep and recovery, which then just spirals you night after night. You sleep badly. It just kind of has a knock-on effect. So these are things that really you can start looking at practically, right? So fried sambusa, yes, they taste great. But can we swap those out for more air fried or baked? A lot of the time, there's like high fat carbohydrate, right? Sort of macaroni, these sorts of things. So can we look at just going for pure starchy carbohydrates without the extras of the cheese and the sauces and so on? There's also often high fat protein sources. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think these are like kibbeh, right? And with these, obviously, they're fried. And so, yes, they have protein, but they also have a high amount of fat. So, swapping these for leaner meats can be a great option. Creamy dishes versus tomato dishes, sugar, caramel, butter versus popcorn, fried food, always in favor of grilled food, dishes with sauces, grilled meats, added sugar, take that out. You've got sodas, you've got fruit juices, really try and limit these and offer diet variations or water, and also high sugar desserts. These are things that I'm sure you could have one, two, three, four, five. I think they're called leukomats, right? Something like that. And you can have that in favor, or you can have in favor higher protein sources there. So again, like not just one of these things is going to change anything for you. It is the accumulation of decisions, behaviors, night after night, day after day. That is where the effects are going to compound. And what I would say is starting with that intention from day one is going to be the best way to have it stick for the rest. Because I guarantee if on day one, you are like, okay, I'm just going to enjoy. I'm just going to enjoy whatever I want. And then day two comes around and it's like, okay, I'll just enjoy. It's going to happen and snowball day three, day four, day five. And then it's going to be like, I'm sort of screwed here. And it's going to continue down that pattern. So meal examples. Really, a lot of the time, correct me if I'm wrong, sort of the dishes tend to be very carbohydrate heavy, right? And so a lot of the time we see in terms of like a plate, right? If we just envision this as a plate, two-thirds is carbohydrate a lot of the time. Then we've got the fat. Then we've got small amount of protein, small amount of veg. We really want to flip this, right? We want to have high protein, high amounts of veg, and then shorter amount of carbohydrate and fat as well. So when you're looking at your plates for iftar, your meals, suhoor, etc., like start thinking about this. What is the ratio I have between protein, carbohydrate? Am I getting enough vegetables in? Am I getting enough of fruits in? Am I being fueled and nourished? Is this good for me? And as we go into sort of thinking about protein, right? There's a vast number of you on the call today, so it's going to be very difficult to know how much everyone weighs. But generally, if you are between 50 to 80 kilos in body weight, regardless of if you're male or female, you will need anywhere between 90 to 140 grams of protein or 3 servings to 5 servings from a bottom end to a low end, a top end, sorry. And with this, I don't expect you to eat 5 chicken breasts a day or 7 chicken breasts a day. It just kind of shows you what a serving is like. So with this in mind, looking at your day, looking at your meal structure through Ramadan, like how can this look? How can this start to look? So let's take the example of just, a four servings we want. So maybe for iftar, you've got your yogurt drink. That's, a serving of protein. Maybe you have chicken for your meal. Maybe then suhoor, you have some eggs. And then maybe you have a protein shake at some point in the day. That is solid, right? That gets you 4 servings of protein. So that is kind of, achievable, I think, in this period. And obviously that's going to change depending on what's on offer and meals and preferences and all that kind of stuff. But that is what I want you to think. You on the low end, sort of if you're 50 to 80 kilos, need between 3 to 5 servings of protein. If you're on the high end, 90 or 100 plus, 4 to 7 servings, depending on how much exercise you're doing, right? So at the higher end, if you're training intensely and strength training, on the lower end, if you are not doing that much. And when it comes to your plate, right, often a lot of the meats and fish and stuff are or like broken up, right? So a really good way to think about this is, a serving of protein is about the palm of your hand or the size of a chicken breast, right? So this can then help you navigate what you are doing, like how you are structuring your plate, much like we had, I think, in the previous slide here, right? How you're structuring this and ensuring you're getting the right quality of nutrients in. Now, let's look at this a bit more practically, right? In terms of if you are someone who has one big meal a day. For iftar, we want it light, nutritious, and hydrating. So think water, electrolytes are going to be really, really useful here to help you hydrate. You've got dates, you've got laban, you've got yogurt. Maybe you add some whey protein, maybe some milk. You've got various different soups, baked sambusas, salads, these sorts of things. Fantastic, right? You can see how it is light. It's not going to deliver that food coma. And it is sort of setting you up for energy, right? Quick, available energy. Post-workout, maybe you'd have a protein shake. Maybe you'd have a drinking Greek yogurt. Maybe you'd go for some fruit, dates, bananas, berries, these sorts of things to give you that, carbohydrate to refuel what you're having. And your main meal. So this is going to be the big meal that you are having. We want it slower to digest, right? So it moves through the digestive system more slowly and allows you to be fuller for longer, right? So we want things like meat or higher kind of fat meat, right? So beef, eggs, carbohydrates, things like sweet potato, rice, fats, olive oil, fibrous vegetables, again, to fill you up. And then if you're having snacks within a day, again, whey protein, casein protein, Greek yogurt, fruit, dates, these sorts of things. So from this, you can see, we're getting quality protein in, we're getting quality carbohydrate in, we're getting some fruit, we're getting some veg, so we're getting some good nutrients and vitamins in, and then also hydration being a key area of focus. Now, if you are someone who has those sort of 2 meals a day, the difference is iftar, similar, post-workout, similar. The first meal here, we want it to really be a little bit easier to digest. So things like chicken, fish are great from a protein perspective. Carbohydrate is more like white rice, this kind of stuff. And then the second meal, we want that to be slower to digest. So suhoor is slower to digest. So it just, keeps us fuller for longer, feeding us that energy for longer. And this is a bit of a checklist for you. So to be honest, like this could be a good one for you just to screen capture. How are you breaking your fast with protein? Do you need to plan anything for occasion? Do you need one of those impact protein shakes? The main meal, what is your main protein source for the day? Like how else are you fueling and nourishing yourself, right? Always think about that, fueling and nourishing yourself. And that then helps you decide which food at the buffet are you going to go for. Suhoor, how can you end your day with protein? What vegetables can you use to bulk out the meal to keep the hunger at bay? Snacks, if cravings hit, what nutritious high protein backup snacks do you have to hand? Obviously, I shared a slide with that earlier. And if you're someone who's looking to gain weight through the month, how can you add maybe little and often? How are you going to be grazing through the day to keep the calories coming in? And also, it's not all boring. With our clients, what we do is we give them a free meal each week. And that free meal, some people would call it a cheat meal. We like to call it a free meal because it is an occasion where if you are on plan, you can use this free meal to basically have whatever you want, a pizza, a burger, a tub of ice cream, whatever. But that will give you an occasion where you can go out with friends or family or a special occasion. For me, I always like using it at, I think it was like Markaz in Jeddah, right? Where you've got like the buffet, where you've got everything, where yeah, too good. But anyway, you have your free meal so that when you're on plan for the week, you can use that free meal to just enjoy and sort of, maybe cater to some of those cravings you've been putting off. And so think about this. Like, what extra support do you think you need at this time? Because I imagine everyone on this call is sort of feels like maybe they're torn every which direction, right? Professionally, obligations, home life, maybe there's a new child, maybe there's a new job, maybe there's this or that. Like, what support is it that you need? Is it from your family, your partner, your friends, maybe if you're working with a coach? All of these things, like where can someone ease the load for you? And finally, what will success look like for you? Like what needs to happen for you to finish Ramadan feeling content with the effort that you put in? And for me, I would say like this year, because last year was just enjoying everything, eating all the food, chasing calories, and this kind of stuff. For me, what I'm going to focus on this year is really trying to be sort of better structured with my nutrition. So what I'll be doing is I'll be looking at, okay, what is my intake that I need during the day or the night? And how can I portion that out over separate meals? What is like plan A, where I'm just at home doing nothing? What is plan B, when maybe I go to an iftar and that meal is out of my control? How can I address that? And really scenario planning all these different occasions so that when they happen, I can be like, I'm going to use plan A or I'm going to use plan C. Because then that just puts you in control and allows you to really just know that you are prepared for every eventuality. Just like I said, prepare for the plan for the worst and hope for the best. So Zoom user who said, want to gain muscle, but I don't know if it's possible. It absolutely is possible if you are hitting, well, if you're hitting your strength training, if you are hitting your protein targets and doing that consistently. So as we showed you before, Firas, I think over, what was it, 4 months starting in Ramadan, he went up 2.5 kilos of muscle. So it is possible. It just means you need to be focused on what it is that you need to do, right? Because it's very simple, not easy. It's simple. In order to achieve what you want to achieve, you need to do X, Y, and Z, right? The problem is life happens, things get in the way, you stress, you sort of travel, there's disruption. And so that XYZ becomes much more challenging. And so for you, the real power is knowing how you can adjust and adapt and evolve to whatever occasions come your way. So, talking outside of Ramadan for a moment, if you travel, what is your go-to framework to, continue training, to continue eating well, etc.? If you maybe have to have a super busy week and maybe you're having to stay late in work, like what is your go-to framework for that? So really knowing these things empowers you to, to succeed. And lastly, Ramadan Kareem. So now I think what we'll do is we'll get into some questions. So if anyone has, well, first of all, did you find that useful? I appreciate I've been talking at you for like an hour. So thank you for your patience. Thank you for everything. And if you have any questions here, please do just let's put them in the chat and I can start sort of working through them.